Welcome back to another video, you guys. In this update, we're going to be taking a look at a area of interest that the Atlantic. The National Hurricane Center has um, looked here. Now we are now at a 40%. I haven't even done a video since it was tagged at a 20%. But they basically, let me just read this all. An area of disturbed weather over the central tropical Atlantic Ocean is expected to interact with an approaching tropical wave during the next several days. So we have a wave behind it and that little wave, and with the other wave helping it to feed in some moisture, it's most likely going to help this disturbance to get a little bit stronger in the short term. But in the longer term, the conditions become even better, and the chances for a tropical storm or more is rising as of this time. But they say environmental conditions are forecasted to become even better conducive for some tropical development in a day or two, and a tropical depression could form around midweek while the system near over the Western Antilles and Greater Antilles southwest of the Atlantic Ocean. So basically, this can go north of the islands. Right now, what I'm thinking is going to be north, scraping north of the islands. But the question is more down the road. Is it going to hit Florida? Or is it going to do what the Euro has said in the last two runs? But there's the tropical wave. They do have it X. And I will actually like to look at this because one thing I've definitely noticed is the development of the tropical wave, honestly, has become better organized throughout tonight. Some new convection trying to start. I mean, there is definitely some rotation on the northern side moving like this. And then we got some southwestern winds like this. So your axis is right in between here, and there's your tropical wave. It has come a bit better organized with, more tropical wave moisture feeding into the eastern side of this, and to the north of this there is some dry air. But if we take a look at the water vapor here, you can see what I'm talking about with the dry air. So let this just load. Okay, so a little bit better there now. Let's look at that. So there's the tropical wave. If we go into the last frame, one thing we notice is definitely some more moisture out in the atmosphere. It's not completely dry just north of this. There is some drier and some Saharan dust. But in the overnight hours, we've seen a bit more of convection around the area of circulation. I'm very curious how this is going to come out to. I do not think we're going to have a tropical development for the next day or so, but I will like to see how organized this system can get, and if it starts organizing before these islands, then we're going to have some more issues. But there is the moisture pocket here. There's definitely some more moisture over in this direction, so that's a very good for this system. But let's take a look more into the infrared long wave IR. So let this just load. So we take a look at the full IR. Let this just load in. All right. Okay, so there it is. New thunderstorms and convection around this low pressure. You can tell definitely some spin right here. We're going to have to watch because this is moving north a little bit into that dryer. But one thing I'm noticing, some more moisture, and that could really help this system in the short term and definitely in the long term if it can get pretty organized pretty quick. So main things to take away from this. Tropical wave looking pretty healthy. If we look at this, there's the Saharan dust. I did say there's some definitely dry air. But if you look at the MDR, there's another plume, and then you see another area of deep thunderstorm convection. But the National Hurricane Center is not looking at that one. They're more looking at this one. I can see why. Definitely some more convection and more spin. There's pretty much spin along this whole Kelvin couple wave. That's basically just a few waves pretty much together and has a lot of vorticity to it. Sometimes both sides can form or just one. In this case, it looks like just one piece of energy is going to form out of this. Maybe. But there it is, the piece of energy, pretty low in latitude. We're going to have to see how this comes up to the north here. If we take a look at the wind shear environment right now, and I would say the environment is pretty nice with this system. We actually have some pretty good outflow. There's no wind shear, and the atmosphere ahead of it continues to get better with less and less wind shear. So there's not too much really dry air getting forced into the system, and I do think in the short term that actually could help the moisture bubble to develop, because if there was dry air and the storm was in the wind shear area, number one, it wouldn't be able to develop really a core. It wouldn't be able to get moist because all the thunderstorms are getting pushed into one direction. So it wouldn't be able to wrap in. But in this case, there's some good outflow within the wave. There's not really any wind shear. There is some dry air, but we're going to have to watch. There is some really warm waters, but none of the models indicate major development in the next day or two. But we take a look at the Euro model, all right? This is the Euro. This is a really major model because it's been shown this. But let's go 24 hours, all right? There's a tropical wave. Looks a little bit better to me. You know, it's better than what we had before. So maybe it tries to get a little bit more organized. But let's take it another 48 hours here. And there it is. The wave continues to get better slowly but surely according to the Euro. There's definitely some dry air. And not too much wind shear to this, but we're going to have to watch it. Let's go 72 hours. 3 days from now, there's the tropical wave. Moving a bit more north. Some more moisture with it. We're going to have to see if it does develop a little bit more early. We're going to stay watch on the Weather Kingdom team here. Let's go 96 hours. This 4 days from now. There's the tropical wave. Right here. Getting pretty close to the islands now. There is, looks to me of maybe a tropical depression. Big moisture field. One thing you could tell, some maybe banding features within this depression. I mean, that's what it looks like on the Euro. Probably nothing too significant. But both of the waves converge. There's some more moisture to it. So the Euro sees some maybe more development. But let's go 117, 118 hours out. The wave just moves north to Puerto Rico. Struggles a bit, but in the long run, it does start to develop, depending how north it goes or how south it goes. But as it gets close to the Bahamas, it will develop into a tropical storm, according to the Euro. The question is this high pressure a little bit more north on it, where it takes it into the Gulf like this, or something like that? Or does it stay on this way where there's a weakness up here and it pretty much tracks north, maybe gets very close, and then do something like that? Those are the three areas of watch right now. Either way, the environment looks pretty conducive, and there is multiple eddies. There's the Gulf Stream, aka another eddy. So there's some really high ocean heat content and very warm waters. And this is why as it gets more into the Bahamas, this pretty much strengthens pretty steadily into a tropical storm. And at this point, this is getting pretty close to Florida. There's still that weakness in the ridge. So let's draw this out. There's that weakness in the ridge. There's a cold front / boundary right here. So moving in this way. So helping to move this out to sea. There's another cold front. So it cannot really get into the Gulf of Mexico according to the Euro in the last few runs. That's been shown this. But we continue, and this becomes a hurricane off the Florida's coast, moves very slowly north, depending how close it is to the shore, or maybe a little bit more farther out, or it's in the Gulf of Mexico. Will all depend. But there's the cold front, moves north, actually strengthens very rapidly off the coast, and actually becomes a major potential hurricane, very close to the Outer Banks. All right, this is just one run of the Euro. If we take a look at 0Z Euro, we had the storm a little bit further north and a little bit weaker. But we still had a similar idea that it goes near Florida, rides it up, rides the coast, and goes out to sea. So In this latest run, it's a little bit slower, and it's a bit stronger. If we go out to the third run ago, I don't think it was... Yeah, it wasn't showing anything really. Alright, those are the two main runs. But if we go to 0Z on Friday, it did have a storm, I think. Yeah. There it is. That tropical wave goes into the Gulf and becomes a tropical storm near the Florida coast. So the Euro in the last few runs have become a little bit more consistent on where it still develops a storm. That's very big about the Euro. The consistency in the Euro is becoming better as we speak. All right. We take a look at some dry air in the wind shear forecast for this. And right now it's battling some dry air. But over the next few days, it will gain a moisture bubble. Maybe struggles a bit with the core. That is expected. But it... Oh, this is the 18Z. Let's go to the 12Z that we can see further out. Pretty much the same thing. Has a bit of moisture. Moisture field becomes a little bit better. And even if it's near the Bahamas, it still struggles with its moisture. It's going to have some dry air issues its whole life probably. So we're going to have to watch that. Another tropical wave coming off the African coast. But look at this system. Really surrounded by some dry air. So that could be the downfall of the system. We take a look at the wind shear. There is no wind shear. Maybe towards the end of this, some more wind shear. But in the short term, long term, this has no wind shear. So if it can create a moisture bubble pretty well, this could strengthen pretty quick. Alright. Now let's take a look at the Canadian model. I hear a lot of people say, Canadian's too far south, too far west. It is coming back where the Euro is. But the main thing, it does show a system developing just north of the islands. Maybe these go through the Dominican. It just all depends. But this one goes south of the islands. But this is the latest run. If we go to the last run, it was a little bit more further south. So it's adjusting itself. But it does show a tropical storm into Cuba. Goes in the Gulf. And becomes a very strong Category 2 hurricane in the panhandle of Florida / Alabama and Mississippi and New Orleans. So both of these models show something, but let's take a look at the one and only Fantasy GFS. I will say the GFS is a very big surprise to me. Yes, we had two model runs that had a big storm, but that has died today. 12Z and 18Z shows nothing. Dead storm through Cuba. Never gets its time to develop. Just stays completely dead. I think this will change. I don't think I think the GFS hasn't done a good job with this system. I think the Euro is a majority doing that. This was the last run too, just showing nothing. But just go to the previous run of that. This 60. This was a full-blown out hurricane entering the Florida Keys. I mean, look at this. And it's really nothing to change. I mean, look. We look at this and this. Honestly, the latest runs have this a little bit further north. So I do not know why it doesn't really develop. But it does develop into a very powerful Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane into Florida. Alright. We go to the run before that. The 0Z. Had a hurricane too. You know, had a Cat 1, Cat 2 into the panhandle of Florida. So it's just crazy how the GFS has been. I'm not saying the GFS is completely wrong. Maybe it's right. But right now, I wouldn't count your bets on the GFS. Until it gets a little bit closer. Because I think right now the Euro's on to something. GFS is kind of confused what's going on. But there it is. Major hurricane right into, or Cat 2 to Cat 3. Into the Texas and Louisiana border. Like 4 runs ago. So uncertainty with the GFS, Canadian trying to wrap itself with the Euro, and Euro with the most consistency. That's the latest on the models. We look at the GEFS models, there's only a few samples showing this to develop. but down the road in the long term does see more maybe low pressures in the MDR, maybe some more development. We're going to have to watch that. But we go to Euro, and all the Euros is just crazy on this storm.